Welcome back to another episode of the Audible Angle. As always, you can call me Dilly, guy with the hat. Urbs going camouflage today. Doesn't have the glasses on yet. If anybody is confused, there it is. There's the glasses. Anybody watching rather than listening, which is, we're available on all platforms, so it's possible that you listen without watching. You'll notice right away that there's a third window, at least if we're doing this right, there is. And, it's a little bit of a tough subject. Packer fans out there, and we're trying to limit profanities a little bit, but it's going to be a hard one today. We got our butts kicked so badly, so embarrassingly. We actually have to turn part of the show over today to an actual live in the flesh Ravens fan. Now, there is some, reputable qualities here. It's not the right word, but some good qualities. He did spend some time coaching in Green Bay. He has been to Lambeau Field in person. He might share some of that. But we're talking to a fellow collegiate athlete today, a professional athlete in Baltimore, no less, a Division I collegiate coach. We're going to introduce him as Jesse Roberts, and we'll probably call him Coach the rest of the way. And Coach, why don't you just start off? I mean, we kind of asked you a little earlier, or we didn't ask you this one, but are you just a tried and true lifelong Ravens fan, or how did you end up becoming a Ravens fan?
Yeah, so that's kind of a crazy question, kind of based on the history of Baltimore football, and I grew up a Colts fan, actually, and I was at the game in, I guess it was 1983, when John Elway came back in his rookie season playing for the Broncos, and they played at Memorial Stadium, and for, 3/4 of the game, the stadium, all they did every time the Broncos had the ball was chant Elway sucks. 60,000 people just chanting Elway sucks for the whole game. And then Steve Morton, I think it was, came in and relieved him at the end and came back to beat the Colts that day. And then they left. Then the Colts left town, and we were kind of without a team. So for 13 years, we were out kind of in the wilderness. And then the Browns made the decision to come to Baltimore, and we all kind of just jumped back into having something to do on our Sundays, which was great. My dad was military, so he kind of grew up as a Redskins fan, so I kind of had to kind of suffer in silence with the Redskins on TV. Because if the Redskins weren't doing well, the house wasn't fun. But, I'd always loved Baltimore football, and then when the Ravens came back to town, it was kind of a no-brainer. So just really happy that we had a team, and over the years it's been kind of a fun ride. We've had a little bit of success, and then the last few years have been really, really fun to watch, and going to games at M&T Bank Stadium has been a lot of fun, with the team being pretty exciting around Lamar Jackson, and now adding Derrick Henry to the mix. It's been a lot of fun.
So just for
I'm going to call a quick audible already, Urbs, as we like to do on the show. As a Ravens fan, I wouldn't say a closeted Browns fan. I was just a Browns fan. I think partially due to Tecmo Bowl and playing video games as the Browns as a kid. They were my backup team, or always have been my AFC team. Did you have any compassion for how angry Browns fans were when they packed up in the middle of the night and moved to Baltimore? I know they kind of have a residual hate for the Ravens, and hopefully not for Baltimore fans, because people. I remember that move. I don't think I remember. I think I vaguely remember the move to Indianapolis, or I was at least aware that they used to be the Baltimore Colts even as a kid. But do you ever feel that from Browns fans, or have you ever talked to anybody like, hey man, like, we feel you. We had the same thing happen when we lost the Colts?
It's funny you say that. I've actually had some clients at schools in Ohio, around Cleveland, and as soon as the topic of football comes up, you kind of have to put your guard up and be like, look, I get it. I think the big difference, if you're looking at the two franchises and kind of what happened, is the NFL, I think, kind of realized that they allowed a situation, a bad one, to get worse when the Colts left Baltimore for Indy. The Browns got to keep their name, got to keep their colors, got to keep their history, and now all the records that the Colts had are now part of Indianapolis records, right? So, I think Johnny Unitas still holds some records if you look at the Colts' historic stats, and it's kind of weird. I think as a Baltimore fan, I would definitely say I get it, and I know how hard that is when your team rolls out, and it happened in kind of two, I'll say, similar ways if you think about the trajectory of how the teams kind of left town. But if there's anybody that I ever talk to from Cleveland, the first thing I always say is like, look, I get it. Sorry. Like, you guys ended up with a way better stadium. You ended up with your colors. You only had to wait a couple of years. I'm sorry it worked out this way, but at least this way, both cities are kind of made whole, and let's just agree to shake hands and hate the Steelers and move on.
Which is a great lead-in. We'll talk about that yet today. That there's a big game that's coming up here this weekend, but let's save that for in a bit. I want to just, knowing our demographic, I mean, Jesse, I know you're a lifelong follower of Audible Angle, but I just kind of clue you in. Most of our listeners are, for obvious reasons, are female. And probably in the 20 to 25-year-old, because we're hipsters, these two characters, Dilly and I. But I'm going to give them a little bit of education. When you had said the Redskins, what you really were talking about is the current day Commanders, because there's a lot of listeners that are like, who the hell are the Redskins? This guy from Baltimore is talking about. One of the biggest things I wanted to get a perspective from you before we get into the game, and I can't wait till we get bashed completely, which we deserve, which the folks at 1265 completely deserve. You spent 1997 to 2000 in Green Bay, so you got to kind of get indoctrinated to the Green Bay culture, the Packer culture, if you will, which is a hustling and bustling, large metropolitan city. I mean, that we all know that, right? Like, there's a lot of action.
Major market.
Talk to me a little bit about the if there's any similarities to Raven fan to Packer fan, or if it's just we're just nuts here in Green Bay land, and you guys in Baltimore are a little bit more sane. But is there craziness out there as well? Talk to me.
So, I've described to people basically my experience in Green Bay with nothing but just fond memories, and trying to describe what it was like living there as an outsider, kind of with fresh eyes. And I remember in my first year coaching at GB, I remember the Packers were playing the Vikings on Monday Night Football. And this is back when Monday Night Football was a big deal. Nobody cared about Sunday night, right? It was Monday Night Football was the big game.
The Freeman catch.
Yeah, right. And I remember thinking, okay, not that game. I'll tell you why. I remember thinking, oh my God, I've got to get across town because the traffic's going to be horrible. I got to leave the school by 5 to make sure that I get across town and everything. And I remember driving past Lambeau. It's around 5:30, and there's cars out, and everyone's tailgating, and the smoke's coming up, and all of that. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, this is what football should be about. This is awesome. And then I paused, and I was like, wait a minute. The game's in Minnesota. Like, what the actual hell is going on? Like, people are tailgating for a freaking road game. And that's how I describe, like, you could be a Ravens fan or a Broncos fan or whatever. You're never going to your stadium on a road game to go tailgate. But that's the mystique of, and the passion that the city and not just the city of Green Bay, but really just all of Northeast Wisconsin. Like, everything is just about the green and gold. And for me, it was very easy to adopt the Packers as kind of my second team, which I did. And I laugh because the only kind of day off we had in that time in soccer were Sundays, right? Because we didn't play on Sundays, and the best time of week for me to go shopping was noon on Sundays, because I could have the whole store to myself, and I could listen to the game because they piped the game in the in the sound system in the grocery store. So I wasn't going to miss anything. I could get my food for the week, get everything sorted out, and oh, by the way, I could like listen to the game. So it's a different animal. Baltimore is a rabid city when it comes to the Ravens. And mostly welcoming to visiting fans, but not like Green Bay. Green Bay is just so different and so welcoming. And my wife, we travel a lot for Ravens games. So we've been to Charlotte, we've been to Miami, New Orleans. We've been to a lot of different stadiums. And when we went to Green Bay, it took her like a week to kind of recover from how nice everyone was to her, because we're just so used to that Northeast mentality that people have, and everyone was just like, "Oh my God, you're from Baltimore! Hey, welcome to our stadium. We can't wait to help you out. Where are you sitting? Where you got the good seats? Okay, you guys need a hot dog? What can we get for you? It was awesome. So from my perspective, like, and I joke with her, I would certainly have raised a family in Green Bay if all things were being equal. Like, I love it there. Sorry, that was a really rambling answer, but that's kind of the difference.
Well,
We
I'm
specialize
glad
in
you
that.
covered that. Yeah, I'm glad you covered that, because we're going to ask you about, your trip there that you mentioned you made with your wife. Now, it wasn't for this game. And let's take one beat before we get into a very uncomfortable and disgusting scenario around this weekend's game. But just in general, the Ravens, I don't know. I can't speak for everyone in the world, amazingly enough. But they started off tough. It was a tough start to the year. I think a lot of people still kind of felt like we trust the Ravens franchise. We trust Harbaugh, that they're probably going to right the ship a little bit and get back into the mix. How are you feeling overall? You had the rough start, and I think the last 10, you've been like 7-3, clawed your way. There's been hiccups. How do you feel about the season overall? Is it just, hey, is it just win, baby? Is it like, man, I don't know if this formula is right anymore? What's a Raven fan perspective?
So it's been a really, I'll say this in general. It is not easy being a Ravens fan, especially over the last 5 years, given our propensity to just throw games away in the fourth quarter. I mean, I was joking this week, like we had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. I'm like, okay, now it's time for us to just piss the game away, because that's what we do. It's been a really interesting season and a hard one to watch at times, because you give away the game in Buffalo, you start 1-5, and to be honest, the noise inside of Baltimore right now, if you listen to Baltimore talk radio, everybody wants everyone fired. This is one of those cases where sure, the offensive coordinator had a good game, giving the ball to Derrick Henry 36 times, because if he didn't hand it to him 35 times, he was going to get run out of town, right? Like, that's just how frustrating it's been for fans in Baltimore. So while, yeah, it's kind of this just win, there's also a faction of fans in town who literally feel like, I hope we don't make the playoffs so they can just fire the whole coaching staff, because that's kind of where people's minds are. So it's like, yay, you get into the playoffs, that's awesome, and you get into the playoffs, so that means the coaching staff's going to be back next year. So there's like this really weird, and this is always the way it is in Baltimore. I mean, even when the team was average, it's always the play caller's fault. We've probably been through, I don't know, what feels like 50 different offensive coordinators, and some good ones, over time. If you look at the list of names who've been through in Baltimore, we had Rick Neuheisel, we had Cam Cameron, and guys who put up good numbers in other places. But if you don't call the right play, or you don't understand how to call a sweep, or understand when you should call a screen pass, in a Baltimore fan's mind, you need to just go. So it's been a really kind of weird season. I'm kind of in the camp where I just want results, and I want to see the team succeed, because as a Baltimore guy, when the team does well, the town does well. The town feels better. People are more engaged and nice to each other and all those things, right? And that's what I want to see. I just want to see the team succeed, because I can't handle these heart attacks about all these fourth quarter leads that we're blowing.
As we get through this, and I do want to talk a little bit about the quarterback that was in place, because I'll tell you, Green Bay Nation was happy when we found out that Lamar was going to be laid up with his back, but maybe in hindsight, maybe that wasn't such a great thing because Snoop kind of put it on us a little bit as well. We've got a little bit of the same thing going on at the same time in Green Bay as Baltimore does. I'm interested in your perspective. I think Green Bay fans knew that Malik was a good quarterback, but we didn't know he was capable of what he did Saturday night. That was a great performance. Now, how about Baltimore? I know that Dilly and I were talking already. This is Snoop's second stop at Baltimore, correct? He was there, gone, and now back again. Did you, as a Ravens fan, know what you have? And quite frankly, both of our backups may not be on the roster next year.
Yes. Obviously, Snoop has had a pretty good run. I think in the 23 season, he ended up starting the last few games and started the playoff game against Cincinnati, and acquitted himself pretty well. And he's a similar style quarterback in that he's mobile. He runs the RPOs pretty well. And in general seems to have a pretty good sense of the field. And I'll be honest, I think if you look at this season and last season in particular, any quarterback who gets one of their first starts against the Ravens has a career day. And Malik Willis was absolutely no exception. He lit us up like a Christmas tree. And I think, honestly, he's a good player, and I think he can do well. He might not be in Green Bay next year, but he'll definitely earn a spot on the roster. And if you guys can keep him, that's a really good thing, because there is no more important position on a team from a consistency standpoint than your second quarterback. And I mean, apart from a field goal kicker, and I think the Giants found that out when was it Young Hoku kicked the turf really hard. You find that out pretty early that you need to have consistency. That's all you really care about. And I think Malik Willis was excellent. He did well, and I think I was really surprised. And we can talk about the game obviously in depth now, but I mean, I was just surprised that they didn't lean on that a little bit more. I think they tried to keep the running game going, but just couldn't get Jacobs going. So,
well. Here's one thing. Sorry, Dilly. I'm gonna pull an audible here too, because a question just popped in my mind. So can real quick. We're gonna go over to this one. One thing in Packer Nation, and I myself, if you're as an avid fan, of Audible Angle, that I'm gonna go right back here, and I obviously am gonna be on the bandwagon of fire Matt LaFleur, as you guys. Sounds like most of the Ravens fans are fire that staff, but it looked to me. And I want your perspective. Matt LaFleur told me in the post game behind there when I was there that he was ready and they expected the Ravens to run. Boy, I watched 4 quarters of football that didn't look like the Green Bay Packers expected Mr. Henry to be running the ball. But was that couldn't have been a surprise for Ravens fan. It wasn't a surprise for Packer fan. The one, I guess, in the middle of the screen, if you will. Myself, I'm sure, Dilly, you were expecting it. We didn't talk about it in depth in pregame. But was that a surprising thing? I mean, I look at the last 3 games, and he's been over 100 yards, but not 216. I mean, that's an ass-kicking. But I think, and I want your view. So, number 1, was that surprising? Number 2, was it more about the shit show of a Packers defense than it was about Henry?
I think it was actually kind of a perfect storm, because let's go back a week to the New England Ravens game. And in the fourth quarter, the Ravens had built a lead and basically stopped using Derrick Henry. He came off the field and they used Keaton Mitchell, which is fine, but they didn't go back to Henry. And Henry New England had no answer to him. So we all kind of knew going into this week that it was going to be the Derrick Henry show, period, right? And I think if you look at the Steelers game, I think Warren had a pretty decent game running in that game. And I think they basically just decided we're just going to use those outside runs. We're not going to do much in the middle. We're basically going to use kind of outside off tackle as our MO. And that's what really worked. I think the other thing that is different is that the Ravens really use Pat Ricard, their fullback, in a way that most teams don't see and don't have a lot of experience with, on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, just because that's what we do. We always have that extra back who's 300 pounds and would just as soon kick you in the teeth and look at you. So that makes a big difference. So no, I wasn't surprised. And the other thing that you see when you watch Derrick Henry play week in and week out is when he has that early success, by the time you get to the fourth quarter, teams have lost the will to try and tackle or try to even do anything about it. So that's that's what we're used to seeing with him.
Now, going into, Urbs and I at another time will probably get into a great lament about the Packers, and we'll probably argue because the fans that you described that are ready to move on, we call them Irby fans in Packer Nation because that's exactly where he's at. I'm way more concerning. There's a history there, and it goes back to the Minnesota Golden Gopher days of everybody wanting to get rid of Glenn Mason, and then we went into purgatory and then hell for like 5 years, after that. So any of those changes require that you make the right decision on the new coaching staff that comes in. It can actually get worse, and I feel like you got to remind fans of that sometimes. But heading into the big showdown against the big rivals in the Steelers, you kind of mentioned that some teams in the perfect storm where, we faced Detroit and Chicago, pretty tough running games, and felt like we had those relatively under control most of the time. But the Ravens rushing attack with Ricard, who I love, and would have aspired to be someday if I was a younger man. Pittsburgh, you don't have that unfamiliarity factor. How concerned are you that, the success, maybe the rekindling, Jackson will be back, we assume. Are you worried that success doesn't necessarily carry over against a familiar foe like Pittsburgh? How are the emotions heading into the big showdown this week?
So for me as a fan, I'm looking at the injury report just to see if TJ Watt is back. And in many ways, the way that the Steelers dealt with Myles Garrett yesterday will be kind of the same approach that the Ravens have against TJ Watt. You figure out where he is and you run away from him as much as you can, just because he's a wrecker. Yeah, Highsmith is good, and yeah, Hayward is good, but they're nothing compared to the engine that TJ Watt has. So I think that the other thing that you have to do against Pittsburgh in this case is you have to do as much as you can to go against tendencies, and you can still run the ball, you can still run Derrick Henry a ton, but that pulling game with the guards, you do some misdirection stuff, and you still just jam it right down their throat, but jam it away from TJ Watt. That's what you do. So for me, I'm strangely confident that we'll be in a much better position against Pittsburgh than we were the last time we played them, even though we played at home and really gave that game away too. I'd like to think that our coaching staff knows that if they don't figure this out, they're all going to be coaching somewhere else next year. So it's amazing what happens when your job's on the line.
Do you think that carries over? You alluded to it already, and it's I hadn't thought about it, shockingly. I don't always think about things ahead of time, but the parallels between the state of the organizations of being too good to fire staffs, and GMs consistently good, consistently either in the playoffs or making a push. The Ravens haven't gotten that Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, it's an easy answer if they lose to Pittsburgh. Then you're just done. You're doing an autopsy. If they beat Pittsburgh and get to a playoff game, is there a number of wins or a path to success that you think will abate the majority or a lot of Ravens fans that's anything less than AFC Championship game? Is it won the division, we got in, Lamar was banged up, he kind of started coming more with explanations why it wasn't the year instead of fire everybody? Or is it, if they don't win 2 playoff games, doesn't matter?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the fact that they even figured out a way to get back into the dance after starting 1-5 will probably end up being enough to save jobs. And I only say that because the owner, Steve Bisciotti, like, he made his fortune in a staffing company. Like, he owned a staffing company, and for good staffing companies, it's about you hire the right people and you keep the right people. So he's always been about that consistency in the organization. We're not going to make change for change's sake. He's always had that kind of steady hand. So I think in terms of the organization's perspective, getting to the playoffs will probably be enough. Winning a game will definitely be enough. For the fans, however, they're going to want to see changes, especially, in my opinion, will be on the defensive side of the ball. Zach Orr's defenses have had that kind of weird trajectory where they start the year as a nightmare. They make one change, or somebody comes in and makes a change, and then they kind of recover and get it figured out. I think he's personally over his head. But again, the organization is about consistency and loyalty. So I don't necessarily know that they'll pull the plug on him, although a lot of people would really like to see that.
I'll hit you with a two-banger question here. As we desperately try to keep one episode at around 30 minutes, we won't keep you too long here. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention our good friend Aaron Rodgers, our old friend Aaron Rodgers, and the struggles against the passing game, passing attacks that the Ravens defense have had. You've alluded to it with the potential changes to the defensive staff. Talk a little bit about your concern. I mean, there's no DK. Rodgers will be throwing to a bunch of tight ends. His favorite, actually, maybe the closest thing we have to a Frank Ricard equivalent in Washington at tight end. I believe he broke his arm, so he's out. Do you have a lot of worries about the passing game, and then lead into your prediction for this weekend?
So Aaron Rodgers has always been one of the fastest releases for quarterbacks. He's always got that quick release, 2.5 seconds, ball's out. That only really comes in handy when you've got a team that has a great pass rush, and we do not have a good pass rush. So the longer he can sit back there, it doesn't matter who he's throwing to. He could throw it to the GB soccer team out there. We don't know how to catch anything, right? And he would have a great day throwing against the Ravens. So I'm always concerned when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's smart, who knows how to catch teams in the wrong defense or with the wrong personnel groups, who knows what he's doing. So I'm always worried about Aaron Rodgers from that perspective. He might be old, but that doesn't mean he can't still win the game between his ears. So I'm definitely worried about that. I think if we can force them into third and longs and force them to try to stretch the field, we might be okay. But that being said, the last time they stretched the field on us, I think they ran up, DK ran up like 130 yards in a quarter. So I'm going to be guardedly optimistic at best.
Looked like last game, I watched a little bit of that of Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. It looked like he went to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, an old Green Bay Packer.
Yep.
So that'll probably be a high target there as well. Just for the record, I want to throw this out. Mr. Harbaugh has a 180 and 112 record. So the Ravens fan, if they're calling for his neck, kind of subscribe, because I subscribe to the same thing. I have no idea what Matt LaFleur is. Don't care because he can't win in the playoffs. That's for another day. But a couple of things. I think Dilly's got a question coming at you here. We're going to switch footballs here and go back to your specialty. From 97 to 2000, us Green Bay Phoenix fans in the soccer world know that you are primarily responsible for Josh Link's lengthy pro career, a goalkeeper back in the day at GB, so we appreciate that. I know Josh probably hasn't reached out to you and thanked you, so I'll do that on his behalf because basically he's a jackass. Dilly, I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions on the upcoming World Cup.
Well, this will be an easy one for you. The easy question is, as we transition after the Packers-Ravens Super Bowl in February, I think we'd probably love to have you back over our 3 months of World Cup preview shows, I should say, as the matches approach, And I'll just give you a little. It seems like a softball question, but I have questions about it. Is Freeze your guy heading into the World Cup?
This is the first time in 34 years that the U.S. hasn't really had what I consider to be a true number one in the goal. Freeze is okay, but we haven't had what I'll call. This is the first time we haven't had a non-world class goalkeeper at the national team level in a long time. You go back to the days of David Vanoli before he got hurt and Tony Meola took over for the 90 World Cup campaign. And you literally can go from Meola, Casey Keller, Brad Friedel, Brad Guzan, Tim Howard. Those guys would have played for any team in Europe or any team in South America at that time. And now you've got, Matt Turner, who really couldn't get off the bench at Nottingham Forest, and Matt Freese, who's okay, but this is going to be a weird tournament to watch, knowing that goalkeeper is not our strongest position.
Yep, that's my feeling as a total novice. Is at least as a somewhat of a soccer novice fan, keeper was something you could always hang your hat on, and that he had some nice moments in the penalty kicks. I don't even remember which match that was because, of course, I didn't even plan on bringing this up. But he's had a couple moments, but yeah, it feels shaky, and you wish Turner or somebody, who's the young guy, Slolina or.
Yeah, Gabe Slolina. He also, it's crazy. Yeah, Jurgen Klinsmann's son is also a goalkeeper in the pool. So there is some young talent, but let's put it this way. I saw the U.S. team play here in Tampa when they played Uruguay a few weeks back, and the goal that we gave up in that match in the first half was entirely due to just poor communication and really poor decision making in the goals. That does not bode well in a friendly, let alone trying to do that in the games when they really matter come June.
Urbs, you got
I'll
a prediction
tell
for? Oh,
Go ahead, Billy.
I was going to ask for your prediction on Ravens Steelers on the way out here, but shoot if you got something.
No, I've got. Let me just handle one real quick. I officially feel like the dumbest guy on the call. Thank you for that, Coach, for rattling off the last 25 years of goalkeepers, which I probably would have said Tony Meola and then Matt Turner. So that's awesome. Thanks for making me feel smaller. I appreciate bringing you on, and that's probably the last time I'm bringing you back in. But anyway, to your point, Dilly. No, actually, good point, good call on all those keepers, and you're right. I do subscribe to your same thoughts. It's kind of, you don't want to be weak between the posts, and I think that might be one of our weaknesses. And we'll dive into depth once the Super Bowl is over here, and we'll go to real football. I do think, right, Dilly, coming back to what my prediction is, the Ravens Steelers, which is obviously the game of the week because they got the Sunday night game, which was announced last night. I think that Aaron Rodgers, you never know. You can never be too sure. But what we saw from the Ravens, I do think that the Packers defense is better than what we saw, but they dismantled them. And I'm going to tell you that it was a lot about what they had for game planning. I do like the coaching staff. I think that Tomlin and the Steelers are nearing the end. He's maybe extending himself a little bit in Pittsburgh with this late run, as well as Harbaugh is extending himself a little bit in Baltimore. But I do like Baltimore here on Sunday night to capture an unprecedented division championship here and go on. I don't know how far they'll go in the playoffs, but let's be honest, defense and running game wins late in the season, and that's a strength. I would say this is going to be a 7 to 10 point game. I think it's going to be tight, but it'll be fun to watch, and I'll be tuning in. I don't know, guys, and maybe before we sign off, I don't know if it's going to be as exciting as last night's Sunday night football game. Did you guys watch that? I think they're still scoring. I believe that the Bears just scored. The 49ers are driving. It is 192 to 194 currently.
Yeah, the over took a beating last night. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, quick on that Sunday night game. I'll be honest. I was still recovering from the Packers Saturday night game. So the game was definitely on. I alternated between phone and television and watching old movies with my wife and daughter. But I think the NFC is still wide open. That'll be my little nugget of hope for Packer fans. I mean, I don't know if you can look at, it's like the Packers and Cowboys game that was 40-40. It's like, are these teams good? Are the defenses bad? Like, it gets murky at some point in the game where nobody stops anybody, and you think, well, shit, if we just play either of those teams and get 2 stops, which apparently was impossible on Saturday night, then it's a real ball game because you get the feeling they can't stop your team. My prediction for Baltimore in Pittsburgh is Baltimore, and I don't have very much faith at all in the Pittsburgh defense, and I don't think Pittsburgh has enough to exploit the Ravens' weakness against the passing game. I mean, they have some moments. We know DK's out. The rest of the guys are just guys. Valdez-Scantling, I guess it could come down to if he makes his 1 out of 6 miraculous catches, but it's not 100% catch rate for MVS. It's apparently not 100% that he'll run the right route that Rodgers wants him to either. So I think Ravens blast them. I think it's 24-13. I say this every game, it seems like, but I feel like it'll be one of those more comfortable 2-score, maybe 9-point, probably weird score with those two teams, but where you don't feel the pressure if you're a Ravens fan of having to stop Rodgers with 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go. I think at that point, he'll still be hanging on to a 2-score lead. And you coach, you don't even have to watch. Just get ready for the divisional round. It's a lock.
If it's a 2-score game, the pucker factor in Baltimore will be at a 10. It's going to be so I'm hoping for a 4-score game so I can turn the game off early. But I'm hoping for good news and look, this is why we always circle the last game of the year, because you never know how it's going to work out, and for once. And I actually feel sorry for the rest of the country that they've had to watch the Ravens on national TV seemingly 3 out of 4 weeks. Probably sick of watching Ravens football. I'm hoping that we'll have some good news and something to come back and talk some more about in the future. So let's go, Ravens.
Coach, it's been a great time. I appreciate you carving out 40 minutes. This is a record for Audible Angle. Dilly, I'll let you sign off. But, Coach, when you're back in Green Bay, I'm bringing you straight. None of this high-end stuff. We're going right back to the Bar East, 50 wings each. We're going circa 1997, and they're on herbs this time. It's on me.
100% chance. I'm in. 100% chance.
Thanks for the time, again, and if I can build up Irby's confidence enough, we'll get you back close to the World Cup and start breaking it down. We only have 6 months-ish to go to try to cover each group, and there's 37 groups of 12 teams this year in the World Cup, so we'll need all that time to get through it.
No, thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. It's been great, and looking forward to keep the conversation going. Thanks again.
See you again, Coach.
It's been a pleasure. See you guys.